Balance is something we only notice when it's gone. We spend our lives walking onto feet, taking every stable step for granted, never questioning the ground beneath us as we move through our days. It is a miracle of physics and muscle that we don't just tip over more often in this spinning, chaotic world we've built for ourselves. I tried this old training trick recently, something from the world of Kung Fu that felt more like a psychological trap than a physical exercise. They call it Jin Ji Du Li, the Golden Rooster standing on one leg, and it sounds quite majestic, like a secret passed down through generations of warriors. It sounds like something you'd see on an ancient silk scroll in a quiet temple on a mountain, surrounded by mist and the smell of burning incense. But in reality, it feels a lot more like a slow-motion car crash for your own fragile sense of dignity in the middle of your living room. You lift one foot, just a few inches off the ground, and for the first 10 seconds, you feel remarkably fine, almost proud of your own stability. You're steady. You're strong. You think to yourself, I could easily do this for an hour if I wanted, and you start to feel quite accomplished. Then comes the instruction that changes everything. You have to close your eyes and let go of the visual world entirely, without reaching for a wall. The moment the light goes out, the entire room starts to tilt and spin in a way that feels deeply personal and slightly aggressive to your senses. Without your eyes to anchor you to the walls and the floor, your brain starts to panic and reach for something that isn't there anymore. It's a sudden, sharp realization of how much we rely on the outside world just to stand up straight and maintain our place in space. We think we are balanced people, but we are actually just leaning on everything we see around us, constantly correcting for a world that never stays still. Your ankle starts to twitch almost immediately, searching for a center that isn't there anymore, vibrating with a nervous energy you didn't know you had. It's like a tiny, desperate animal trying to find its way back home in a dark and unfamiliar forest, scratching at the ground for any sign of safety. You start to sway, and the air around you suddenly feels like it's made of heavy, invisible water that's pushing against you from every possible direction. Most people think balance is just a physical skill, something reserved for the elite athletes and the professional dancers on a bright and crowded stage. But standing on one leg in the dark proves it's actually a very loud, very frantic internal dialogue between your body and your deepest, hidden fears. It's a dialogue between your inner ear and your stubborn mind, and neither of them is listening particularly well to what the other has to say. We are falling. Your ear screams into the void, and your brain shouts back, no, we aren't. Just hold on for 5 more seconds, please. In that gap between the scream and the shout, you find something that feels like a quiet, hidden room that you've never bothered to visit before. You find the limit of your own patience, which is usually much shorter than you'd like to admit to yourself or to anyone else who might be watching. The Chinese masters use this to build what they call internal power, a kind of quiet, centered strength that doesn't depend on big muscles or loud noises. They weren't just training their legs to be hard. They were training their focus to stay perfectly still even when the world outside was moving too fast. If the mind moves, the body follows, and then the foot hits the floor with a very loud, heavy thud that sounds like a failure of character. It's a brutal way to learn that your thoughts have actual, physical weight in this tangible world of ours, even the ones you think are small. A single worry about a bill or a text message can literally knock you over if you let it into the room, while you're trying to stay upright. I wonder if that's why we struggle so much in our daily lives, even when the path is supposedly clear and the weather is perfectly fine. We carry so much mental luggage that we can't even stand still in a quiet room for more than a minute without feeling the urge to run away. By minute 3, The burning in my calf muscles started to feel like a very personal, very hot insult directed at my lack of regular exercise. I started to wonder why I was doing this to myself on a perfectly good Tuesday afternoon in December, when I could be doing literally anything else. Is there a prize for being a rooster in an empty apartment? Probably not. And that's the hardest part of any discipline that nobody else ever sees. But then I noticed something strange. The shaking in my knees started to feel like a steady, low rhythm, almost like a piece of music I'd forgotten. It wasn't about being perfectly still anymore. It was about learning how to move with the inevitable wobble of being a human being on a spinning rock. Maybe that is the real secret to life that the masters were trying to hide behind all that difficult and painful training in those mountain temples. You don't find balance by being rigid and hard. You find it by learning exactly how and when to bend without breaking into 1,000 pieces. But even that thought felt a bit too much like a motivational poster for my liking. So I let it go and focused back on the floor. In reality, my foot was cramping, and I really wanted to sit down and eat a bagel and forget that I ever tried to be a golden rooster. I noticed you just now, maybe you Ray, trying to lift a foot while you listen to me ramble on about balance and the nature of internal power. Be careful with the furniture near you. The floor is always a lot closer than it looks when your eyes are shut and your mind is wandering off. Why do we crave these brutal and intense methods of self-improvement every single year, as if we are trying to punish ourselves into being better? We love the idea of hardening ourselves, as if we are pieces of cold steel being forged in a fire to become something sharper and more dangerous. But we aren't steel at all. We are skin and bone and a collection of very confused, very tired nerves that just want a bit of peace. I stayed up on that one leg until I felt like my brain was going to short circuit from the pure effort of trying to stay centered in the dark. When my foot finally hit the floor, the world felt incredibly solid and heavy and surprisingly welcoming in a way I hadn't noticed before I started. It was a relief, but it also felt like I had just lost a very quiet, very invisible war with myself that I didn't even know I was fighting. We spend so much time trying to be unshakable that we completely forget how to land with grace when the inevitable fall finally happens to us. The masters say you should do this until you can't stand it anymore, until the ego finally gives up the ghost and leaves you alone in the silence. But until you can stand it is a very moving target, especially when the coffee is already brewing and the emails are starting to pile up. Some days, I can't even stand the sound of the clock ticking on the wall in the middle of the night when the rest of the world is asleep. Other days, I can stand in the dark on one leg for 10 minutes and feel like a king of my own tiny, private, and very wobbly empire. It's a strange, fickle thing. This discipline we all chase so desperately in our apps and our books and our expensive morning routines we never finish. I think I'll try it again tomorrow, just to see if the wobble has changed its tune or its frequency, or if I've just gotten better at ignoring it. Or maybe I'll just keep both feet on the ground and call it a successful day of being a normal human who doesn't need to stand on one leg. There is no law that says you have to be a golden rooster to be a good person or a happy one, despite what the martial arts masters might tell you. Though, I must admit, the view from one leg is much more interesting than the view from two, if only because it makes you appreciate the ground. You realize that everything you thought was stable is actually just vibrating in a very complex way that we usually choose to ignore for our own sanity. The floor, the walls, the air. It is all just a collection of moving parts that we pretend are still so we don't feel too dizzy all the time. And you're just one more part, trying to find a place to stay still for a second before the next shift in the tectonic plates of your own life. It's a lot of work for a result that nobody else can even see, which makes it feel almost like a secret language you're learning with your own body. But then, the best victories are always the ones that happen in the dark, where nobody can judge the shake or the sweat on your forehead. I'm still a bit wobbly today, to be honest, but at least I know why I'm falling now. If you ever find your center, let me know how it feels. Balance is something we only notice when it's gone. But maybe that's because when it's there, we are too busy leaning on everything else to feel it. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.